Michael? He's behind the mic.
There's Michael.
It's part of my Bitcoin privacy project. OPSEC people.
All right, let me make sure that the YouTube link is shared with Twitter, and let's see. Okay.
We need a social media intern.
Well, apparently we need like a senior social media engineer because this is so complicated. Okay. All right. Welcome to the Noted Bitcoin podcast. This is your co-host, Pierre Ochard, and I'm joined here with Michael Goldstein. Michael, how are you?
Howdy. I'm doing fantastic.
Awesome. And today we have a very special guest, Kalle. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine. Thank you.
Kalle Rosenbaum has written an excellent new book called Grokking Bitcoin. And you've been studying and involved with Bitcoin for quite a while. Do you want to give your background and what brought you to writing a book, which is a huge undertaking and a huge achievement?
Yeah, I've been working as a software engineer for 20 years, mainly doing Java code for government bodies and private companies, XML in, XML out, but I've always loved, the grassroots movements that does things better, like Linux and like BitTorrent and now Bitcoin. And I've always been kind of a pain in the ass to people about those things, hassling people with Linux, trying to install Linux on their computers in the early days, and the same now with Bitcoin. I'm just a complete pain in the ass for them, for my friends and family.
Evangelizing.
Yeah, you could say that. I'm beginning to calm down now a bit. Actually, I'm not trying to do that anymore. And I discovered Bitcoin, I think in 2012. I heard about it for the first time. It was a friend who bragged about writing some Drupal integration with Bitcoin or something like that. And I remember watching a Linux show or listening to a Linux podcast called the Linux Action Show. And that guy, Chris, his name was Chris on that show. He started a podcast called Plan B. I think it was. It was the first Bitcoin podcast I heard. That was before Let's Talk Bitcoin. So that podcast really got me interested, and I checked it out and tried to learn a bit and bought some, and but I didn't really get it then. It took me a while to actually grok Bitcoin. But
it's interesting how there's like a process of becoming a Bitcoiner, and the enthusiasm often comes ahead of actually understanding Bitcoin. Like I was excited about Bitcoin long before I even understood why it worked or what cryptography was.
Likewise.
Yeah, I was just excited that you could build this system that nobody could turn off. But I didn't understand how it worked, of course. But I was intrigued by it and wanted to learn more. So I learned through various blog posts and forums, like everybody else, I guess. The white paper, of course. I remember having a especially hard time actually understanding how transactions were linked together, or how the transactions themselves worked. I remember the looking at the white paper. I just didn't quite get it. I used a YouTube channel called Khan Academy. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but they had an excellent way of explaining Bitcoin. So I used that.
I remember they got on the ball with that pretty early on too. That was around 2013, 2014 that they put out that really excellent video series.
Yeah, it was excellent. So I was really glad about that. And then when I started actually grasping it, I mean, the joy of actually understanding the system actually beat the joy of having the system somehow. So I was really thrilled when I finally got it, and I got the big pieces together. That feeling was priceless. To actually understand the money. I never understood money before, but this is the first time I actually could understand money. And I think that goes for a lot of people in this space.
Yeah, it's funny. I was watching yesterday a movie it's like 10 years old now. It's called District 9, and it's about aliens coming to Earth. And I was thinking, like, Bitcoin is like alien technology, and like we stumbled across it, and everyone's trying to figure out how to use it.
Yeah.
It's very powerful.
We stand outside, like, playing musical notes at it, trying to get it to communicate with us.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and I think too that Bitcoin offers, because once you do understand the blockchain construct and how the transactions work and all of that, and then you're able to use that as the reference point for modeling a money, it makes all other monies seem that much more ridiculous. Because when you actually try to map the Federal Reserve or the European Central Bank onto a blockchain model, which you kind of can, except there's like one signing party, and you look at their the inflation rate, but also how the transactions work and can be reversible or whatever. Once you do that, it's quite obvious just how elegant Bitcoin is in comparison with all other monies, aside from any just pure economic benefits.
Yeah. I never really understood the modern economics. It's like, it's Greek, and my common sense just tells me to keep out of it.
I don't think anyone does. I don't think they understand it either. So.
Yeah. Did you see the tweet the other day from IMF where they said that how can we? I don't remember the tweet.
What was
now.
the negative interest rates?
Yeah. Deeply negative interest. How can we make deeply negative interest rates feasible? And they linked to a blog post where they basically said that they want to eradicate cash in order to actually. They had some very weird scheme for doing that. So it just. I'm pretty much afraid of what's going to happen with the monetary system.
Yes, although the bright side is that we live in a world in which our enemies sell our products way better than we could ever hope to ourselves. So that's good.
Yeah, and it's like the same thing with like the stable coins and the Tether drama. It's like, yeah, that's why you shouldn't trust third parties, like we've been saying for a while now.
Yeah.
It also seems to show just problems with interfacing with the fiat system at all. Yeah. I'm hearing a lot of different conflicting stories about what's really happening with Tether. Ultimately, I just care about my own personal Bitcoin holdings. I wasn't using exchanges in the first place. But a lot of it seems to at least be exacerbated by having to have really weird banking relations because the fiat system is so difficult to work with.
It's like it's trust maximized, whereas we're trying to build trust minimized in every aspect. Kalle, do you want to get into what the contents of your book are and kind of where do you see your book fitting into the educational ecosystem in Bitcoin?
Yeah, I could probably expand a bit on that. When I was contacted by Manning, and they wanted me to write a book on blockchain. They said, and And I wrote back to them saying politely that I'm not going to write a book on blockchain, but I'd like to write a book on Bitcoin. So and that's where it started. And I saw this gap in the book space. We had this programmer book, Mastering Bitcoin, which is great. And then we have a lot of books for economists, visionaries, and those kinds of people. But there were no good books explaining the technology on a deep level for non-programmers, technically interested non-programmers,
Right.
like most of us are. I mean, yeah, I'm a programmer, but I would still like a book that's more high level than code. So I wrote the book that I wanted to read myself, with a type of learning style that I needed myself when I learned Bitcoin. I was a bit inspired by the Khan Academy videos as well. But yeah, so I'm mainly targeting actually non-programmers, technically interested non-programmers, because I think those people need to understand the system that they are interacting with in order to make good decisions on what code to run on their machines, what upgrades to adopt. They should be able to actually vet ideas, see through scams, see through deception, or yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah. Well, so Murray Rothbard talks about like the intelligent layperson was kind of his target audiences, because there's and at the Bitcoin meetups that I organize, like I've noticed this as well, is that you have people who come from all different kinds of backgrounds. Like some of them are like plastic surgeons. So like they're obviously very intelligent. They highly trained professionals, but they're not software developers. But they're fascinated by Bitcoin, and so this is perfect for them.
Yeah, I think so too, and I honestly think also that is great for programmers, because a programming book might not be the best way to start learning about Bitcoin. I mean, somehow you need to get an abstract idea anyway. Before you can start being productive with code in Bitcoin. So you need the abstract view of it. Of course, you can go with Mastering Bitcoin or Jimmy Song's new book. That I haven't read that one, but I just assume it's very good.
It is.
Okay, good.
but it's definitely, I mean, yeah, I think you're right. Like, it's definitely not something I would throw at that intelligent person, because you do need that, you need a background in programming. It really helps to have at least a basic understanding of Bitcoin to get into, as opposed to having a way to sort of, jump in and kind of just absorb yourself in the high level, information.
Yeah.
What were some like surprising things that you learned as you were writing the book?
Surprising things. I don't know.
or your favorite thing that you learned, some interesting new facts that you uncovered.
I don't know. I just like the interaction with Manning very much. This is not answering your question, but
no, that's fine.
I like. I drafted a chapter and we talked about it, and I threw it overboard and started over more or less a few times. And I like that process very well, because, well, they were ruthless with the criticism, but they were very. The end result for each chapter was very good. I mean, we polished it very well, and their input was so valuable. I would never have been able to written this without constant interaction with those. I had a development editor called Christina. Her name was Christina Taylor, She had so much good feedback because, you know, she's not a Bitcoiner, but she'd read the stuff and, you know, told me everything she got stuck on. And then we had another guy called Bert Bates. He was like a pedagogy oracle at Manning. He was absolutely fantastic in, you know, helping me boil down to concrete examples. I learned a lot about external and intrinsic and extrinsic cognitive load. When you're going to teach a concept, you shouldn't start out with a broad general description. You should start out with a concrete example of something the system does 1,000 times a day. Alice sends a payment to Bob. That's, you know. So start with concrete example and then expand and make it more and more abstract or general.
Yeah, and that seems especially important with Bitcoin because there's so many different moving parts of the system that interact in like complex manners.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I wrote the book as I did. I don't know if I'm not sure if you are aware, but the book starts with a very simple, you know, simplistic spreadsheet system that everybody can understand. We call it the cookie tokens spreadsheet, cookie tokens. So it keeps track of cookie tokens like it's an account-based system actually. So we have this girl Lisa who works at the office where you work, and you have a office cafeteria, and you have this spreadsheet that Lisa is the only one who can edit, but anyone can access it or view it. So when you want to buy a cookie at the cafeteria, you can pay the cafe through an email to Lisa. So you send Lisa, the miner, an email just asking her to move cookie tokens to the cafe, and that's a very simple starting point that everybody can understand. You don't introduce any new systems there, and then we expand on that in each chapter, adding new technology as we go, so that each new topic is taught on its own without having to have the full context of Bitcoin. You don't have to have the full context of Bitcoin. You can just focus on the subject at hand right now.
So we have a listener question that I think goes with this. What does grokking mean? All right.
Yeah, grokking. This is a series of books from Manning. They have several grokking books. They have grokking algorithms, grokking deep learning, grokking this and grokking that. Grokking is from a novel, from a science fiction novel from I think 60s, called "Stranger in a Strange Land," and the word grok turns up there for the first time, and the meaning of the word differs a bit from time to time in the book, but usually it means to have a very deep understanding of something, emotional, deep understanding. You become one with the subject. And computer science has kind of, you know, adopted that word. You see grok a lot in technical discussions.
Yeah, I guess you could say it's like having cultivated a very intuitive and tacit sense of the system.
Exactly. Yeah.
So one thing, I have a question for you as far as being able to communicate these ideas to people. One thing that's kind of especially difficult in Bitcoin is there are a lot of terminologies and concepts that have a sort of metaphor to them. And those metaphors are difficult to actually communicate to people in the way they think. So for instance, people might confuse something like a wallet with an address, or they think an address is a permanent thing, like an account number at a bank. So did you find interesting ways of trying to get through these linguistic hurdles and instill new sort of models into the reader's mind?
Yeah, well, not really. I can't say that, but when there are when, for example, a wallet is a misnomer. It's not a good word for software that keeps track of your private keys. That's not a wallet. That's a key ring, or something like that. So I just mentioned that on the sidebar, saying that hey, okay, the word wallet is not perfect here, but we'll have to stick with it because that's what people use.
Yeah.
So I try to keep the lingo as is, but explain why the lingo is as it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like I don't know how much of it was Satoshi specifically, but there's just a lot of words in Bitcoin that have like almost every word in Bitcoin has this kind of confusion around it. Even something like mining, mining is actually a rather strange word because it doesn't end once all the Bitcoins are issued.
Right.
And how did you deal with like the political controversies in Bitcoin? Like, do you explain the block size limit and like why that is and different perspectives on it? Like, how did you approach that?
I try to approach it from a strictly technical perspective. I don't discuss the drama in any way. I just describe the system as is, and I try to be objective about it. Try to explain why there is a block limit, and try to explain. Maybe not why there is a block limit. I'm just trying to explain what effect the block limit has, and positive and probably and possibly negative too, but mostly positive effects, if you ask me. But so I try to keep discussion out of it, just explaining the. Yeah, I'll try to be objective about it.
Yeah.
There was something else. It escaped my mind. Sorry.
Well, and even more widely, like the view that miners control Bitcoin versus nodes control Bitcoin versus developers control Bitcoin, like that's a big controversy relating to governance in general.
Exactly, and I spend a fair amount on chapter 11, the last core chapter. Then I also have a few appendices, but the last chapter is about forkology and how different types of Bitcoin upgrades can work and not work. So I kind of, the conclusion of that whole chapter is that it's the users who have the power to use whatever software they choose. So that's the actually the main conclusion of the book, I guess.
No, that's great.
Yeah, but yeah. So, but I try to keep it technical only. Maybe you can see between the lines where I stand. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that educating users about the upgrades that are coming will also be challenging. So do you talk about Schnorr and other upcoming updates, or is it?
No, I don't, because it's purely speculative.
Right.
We don't know if it's going to come at all. We just think so.
And if it comes, it'll be in version 2 of the book.
Yeah, of course.
Great. So what's the most? And I guess it just goes up to SegWit in 2017, and I don't think there have been any protocol changes since SegWit.
No, not really. So yeah, it goes up to SegWit and how SegWit was deployed. I mean, there are some great examples of what can happen during an upgrade there.
Did you find it hard to grok the like how SegWit functions on like a very technical level? Because I still don't fully understand it.
Yeah, you should read chapter 10 here,
Okay.
actually, because I'm really pleased. That's one of the chapters I'm most proud of, actually. That's the SegWit chapter, and I think I nailed that one, actually. I'm pretty proud of it. So, yeah, I think I did.
I'll check it out then.
Yeah, you should.
Just looking at the code, I wasn't able to figure it out, and then reading the BIP, I wasn't able to figure it out either. So
Yeah.
this will be very helpful.
I've been reading those BIPs multiple times over, and they are really hard. I totally agree with you. I struggled with it, really.
So
I
now,
was there when Peter Wulle presented SegWit in Hong Kong. That was pretty exciting. Yeah.
that's great. And what do you see as like the most important upgrades to Bitcoin that we've had? You know, aside from SegWit.
I mean, pay-to-script hash was a major leap forward, but it was probably a bit rushed. I don't know. What else? The block size limit was probably a good idea for decentralization. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, because people don't really talk about P2SH today, but at the time it was controversial. I think there were 2 different proposals for it.
I'll push back on that. There's the sort of Bitcoin. I don't know if it's as much in Bitcoin Cash, but certainly the Bitcoin SV folks do not like P2SH. I don't fully understand the arguments against it. I don't know if they've even laid them out anywhere. But I do know that there is pushback against that, and their roadmap includes removing it.
Really? I didn't know.
It's probably because P2SH doesn't hold up in Admiralty Court.
Yeah, well, Satoshi's original vision was using IP addresses, so hopefully we can just go back to that.
With Windows. Right. And so what was the hardest part about writing a book?
I think it was it was the constant pushback from the development editor and Bert, the pedagogy. That's it could be hurtful, actually, but the end result was good. The question was about what's the hardest part, or the hardest things with writing this book. That was one thing. The other thing was actually staying focused. I'm an expert on York shaving. I have a black belt in York shaving. So I constantly found other stupid things to do all the time. I had this nice list on my whiteboard here with a list of things I need to do before I sit down and write. I'll have it here somewhere. I should have peed. I need to pee before. Coffee fetched, phone in pocket on silent, and all irrelevant windows closed.
Yeah.
And there was some other stuff as well. So I followed that list, and then it went pretty smoothly after that. Before I had that list, it was just it was much worse. So
it sounds like writing a book is a really good way of forcing yourself to become very disciplined.
Yeah. I'm not saying I was very disciplined, no, but even with that list, but it helped.
What are some other projects you were working on at the same time, or that you're interested in?
Yeah, I work as a consultant within Bitcoin space. So I had some work in parallel there. I work usually half time with some consultancy and half time with a book.
Gotcha.
So that's what I've been doing.
What are you going to do with all the free time now?
I don't know.
Start grokking Lightning?
Probably something like that. I don't know. Maybe maybe Netflix. I don't know.
Well, I know Michael has some opinions on that.
Yeah, yeah. I know you think it's a waste of time, and I like wasting time.
I think it's well earned after you publish a book.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Another thing that was really hard was the production phase of the book. I drafted the last chapter in June last year.
Wow.
And we locked the content in June. So since then we had, only been working with production. That's copy editing, illustrations, proofreading, and endless revisions after that. And that process has been so slow. But again, and it has been terribly frustrating at times.
That sounds a lot like software development, where it's like you finish the program and then you're ready to take it, to production, and then that takes double the time.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but the end result was great. It's great, partly because of that long time. During that time, I found several errors in my book, so I had time to fix some embarrassing misunderstandings from my side. And so in the end, it was probably a good thing that it took this time, but it was frustrating when it's during that time.
Yeah. Michael, did you have another question?
Well, yeah, I had a question going back. Actually, Pierre had asked about covering, Bitcoin upgrades, stuff like that. I was curious if there was anything in the book about, for instance, like the 2013 debatable hard fork. I know that under some definitions, people don't even consider it a hard fork. But if there's anything about that and, kind of how things can go wrong and have gone wrong.
What was that? That debatable hard fork? Sorry.
So the 2013 fork was the Berkeley DB and Level DB incident.
Yeah. No. That's. I think that's far beyond the scope actually of the book, because it doesn't help the reader to grok. Well, yeah. It would help the reader to understand that consensus systems are really. I
suppose it's a bit of an advanced topic.
Well, I think that there needs to be like and this would not be one book. This would be like a series of books about the history of Bitcoin's development itself, and kind of essentially doing like a forensic analysis of like the Git repo, but also all of the Bitcoin dev mailing list conversations and all the pull request conversations.
I would love David Harding to write that book.
Yes, David, do it.
It would be like, at this point, I think you could do like 6 volumes, 1,000 pages each.
Yeah, there's so much to write about on that.
Just yesterday, a friend asked me if there existed some sort of timeline of the membership of the Bitcoin Core dev team. And I had to it was like, from what perspective do you mean? Because you have the people who are actually making commits. You have people that maintain the code base. You have people who are merely, I shouldn't say merely, but they're not providing code. They're making comments and reviewing ideas. There's people who review the code. There's so many. It's such a broad range of people that you can't even. There is no membership. There is no team to even do that. So that's going to make the person who sets out to write that book, I think, has a much more difficult time than trying to write a book about any other organization.
Yeah, it's so dynamic, so much happening on all sides all the time. Yeah.
Do you think that, like, from a software development perspective, or a protocol development perspective, that Bitcoin is moving more slowly than it should, or than other projects? Because I found it to just like we got CSV, CLTV, SegWit. Like it seems like we got a good pace of protocol level innovation, but then we have people who are complaining about too slow or too fast. Like you have people saying there should be ossification of the code and all of that. What do you make of that?
I definitely don't. I definitely don't think it's too slow. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to finish this.
Yeah, it's a moving target.
Yeah, exactly. I actually have this. I have this tag that I put on some paragraphs in the book that I consider moving targets. You know, often figures. You know, or I mean numbers that I put in there. But yeah, back to the topic of development pace. I think it has the pace it has, and I don't have a say in that. It's just how it is. I mean, I probably wouldn't install software that's rushed on this in this system. It's dangerous. It's a dangerous thing to make changes in Bitcoin. So it should be slow. It should be the slowest moving software in the history.
And on that note, like, do you kind of, what's your view on multiple implementations? And did you look at, as part of writing this book, did you kind of compare between Bitcoin Core and BTCD or what's the?
I just mentioned them briefly.
Yeah.
I just mentioned them and focus on Bitcoin Core because that's what everybody uses. I mean,
right.
This is for beginners. You will encounter these alternatives once you start digging into it.
Right.
It's not. It doesn't help the reader grok Bitcoin. I don't think so.
I think you're. Do you have something more?
No.
Oh, your point of kind of like the speed of Bitcoin development is what it is. I think that's actually a very good point because there is no one that's actually in charge of Bitcoin. There is no actual roadmap, and so there actually isn't even a metric by which to measure that. My personal conviction has been that the pace will slow as Bitcoin becomes more liquid, by virtue of the fact that means that there are more people with more money at stake, meaning they have, you have like, I always, envision a Mexican standoff, and the more people with bigger guns in a bigger Mexican standoff, the harder it is to make those changes.
Yeah, exactly. I think so too. I think you nailed it.
Do you think that part of the conversation about the speed of development has to do with the other conversation about developer incentives and how there are competing altcoins that have set up like a way of, from the block reward, giving it to some foundation that then gives it to developers because they think that makes protocol development go faster and, outcompete Bitcoin?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's all such schemes are kind of fishy. I don't like those external incentive systems, if you will. I like the internal incentive systems in Bitcoin, but external incentive systems are easily gameable or corruptible, and when it's small amounts of money, it probably will work pretty good. But once the pile of money grows, you're gonna start seeing a lot of greed and a lot of corruption. So I think you're shooting yourself in the foot if you set such systems up in the long run.
We saw that happen pretty quickly with the Bitcoin Foundation.
If the system is successful, you'll shoot yourself in the foot.
Right, a victim of its own success.
Yeah.
And then we kind of see with Ethereum, they're already like discussing the problems with their their developer incentives. So clearly, I don't think that there's a right answer there.
Yeah. On the other hand, I have very little insight into other projects. I rarely pay attention, so I can't speak too much about it.
A pure soul.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because you mentioned that in the book you go from teaching with the account system to a UTXO system, whereas like with Ethereum they went the other direction from the UTXO system to an account system, which has been criticized as like not as.
They originally were UTXO?
Oh no, I think
no. He means that when they developed their thing, one of the changes in like a paradigm shift from the Bitcoin model was, oh well, let's have a balance. And then I don't keep up with these things, and so I recently find out that even to set up an Ethereum wallet, I guess like involves having to create a contract that you put out on the Ethereum network. You can't just like produce an address on your computer and receive money or whatever. It's just like the whole thing's very strange, and I'd actually be interested to hear your arguments as to why as you're grokking Bitcoin, how to grok UTXOs as a step in the right direction.
Yeah, that's a I don't know. I'll pass on that, I think. Is that okay?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I found that what I found most interesting about the UTXO model was this idea of having a locking script and then an unlocking script, and the interaction between those two to eventually create kind of more complex smart contracts.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I had most problems with when I learned about Bitcoin. That is the UTXO set, and how how the transactions were linked together in this transaction graph. I had a terrible time actually understanding that.
In a sense, it almost models cash a little better too, where it's just kind of free-floating bills, although there's also this magic voodoo where you can combine them and separate them. There's still like UTXOs are just these individual things, and we really get to see that in action on Lightning Network, as well as the Meatspace Lightning Network known as OpenDime, where a UTXO is literally a physical thing that you can hand to people.
Yeah.
In the description of the book, you say, grokking Bitcoin explains why Bitcoin supporters trust it so deeply and why you can too. It's funny because there's like different uses of vocabulary. And so like people will use like trustless or trust minimized. But at the same time, like we do trust Bitcoin. So how do you think about those different ways of using the word trust?
Yeah, first of all, I didn't write the backside of the book. It was Manning who wrote that piece, but I'm pretty pleased with it. Yeah, it's exactly as you say. It's instead of trusting people, or laws or states, you trust a piece of software instead. So you still need to trust the software you download from, well, Bitcoin Core's website, for example. So you still need to fully trust something.
Or even if you wrote your own implementation from scratch and compiled it, you're still having to trust your own code.
Would never do that. Yeah, so that's right.
Yeah, maybe you should trust your own code a lot less than other people's code in most cases.
Yeah, in my case especially, yeah.
Great. And so people can go on Amazon today and order it, or what's the best way to buy your book?
It's not in stock yet in the major stores. Right now it's only available through Manning.com. So I suggest you go to Manning.com and search for Grokking Bitcoin there, or you can probably put it up in your show notes.
Yes, we'll do. We'll link to it for our audience.
Yeah. So Manning has it for immediate delivery. It will be available 5th, 6th, or 7th of May in Amazon and all the other big ones.
Yeah, it says the EPUB and Kindle will be available on May 7th. And
Yeah, right.
Manning was kind enough to give us a discount code for noted listeners. So we will put that in the show notes so that people can get a discount and grok Bitcoin for cheaper. So they can go stack sats after they grok it.
Yeah.
And it's 480 pages. So that's a lot of information. That's a lot of meat.
Yeah, it's also a lot of pictures, so it's not very dense.
Okay.
It's about 450 pictures in it, I think.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, I'm a very visual learner, so that works for me.
Yeah, it's very much driven by concrete examples and illustrations. So excellent. I really hope you like it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm very much looking forward to giving this a read.
And I saw that you got a forward from David Harding, who was the first guest on the Noted podcast many moons ago. So how do you know David, and how did you convince him to write the forward? Because he's hard to get a hold of.
Oh, I don't know. I actually don't know how that happened. I think he, liked my tweets or something a few times, and I just thought that this guy is excellent. So I think I just emailed him asking to write this forward, and he said he was excited to do it. So it was no problems.
As you were writing,
he was very, very, very kind and very encouraging. He's one of the greatest persons in Bitcoin that I know.
Sounds exactly like David.
He's just phenomenal.
Yeah, I had the same reaction when he accepted to come on the Noted podcast. I was like, wow, all right, that was unexpected. Let's do this.
Yeah.
He's definitely one of my very favorite people in the space. When you were writing this book, did you interact with the Bitcoin community at all, and were able to find help from the community, and if so, pretty easily?
Yeah, my main sources for help was Twitter, Stack Exchange. Twitter and Stack Exchange was my main sources, and on Stack Exchange we have those three legends. You have Merch, you have Peter Wulle, and you have David Harding. Those three guys has been extremely valuable on both Twitter and on Stack Exchange with various stupid questions from me, and they are so generous with their time. It's just amazing. I don't understand how they get anything done when they do this, when they help people this much. So I'm humbled, and I'm very, very grateful for all their help. It's been priceless.
It just goes to show you just how toxic the Bitcoin community is.
Oh yeah, it's so toxic. I'm gonna rage quit right after this book.
But that's great to hear. That the Bitcoin community is there to answer these questions, and I do highly recommend people, if you're reading Grokking Bitcoin or Programming Bitcoin and you have questions, you should always be throwing them out on Twitter or Stack Exchange, and someone's going to be there to help you because we all want each other to understand these things better.
Yeah, and if you tag one of us to make sure we see it and we don't know the answer, like I just retweet people who tag me in questions that I don't know the answer to, because I know that someone out there has the answer. It's just not me, but we can help people out that way too.
Can I ask you, Pierre, how many people do you follow? Because every single person I see on Twitter is followed by you. It says followed by Pierre. How many on your follow list?
I think it's 3,000. And I generally follow anyone who who seems to agree with me.
Yeah.
And it turns out there's 3,000 people out there who might agree with me. So those are easy people to follow. And what it allows is that because of how Twitter's algorithm is, where they say, okay, here, this tweet was liked by 5 people that you follow, and it actually brings it up to the top. And I think that it means that I've seen, like, I get to see tweets that are really interesting that aren't necessarily like being put out by, you know, a thought leader or someone like that. It's a Bitcoiner who might have like 20 followers, but because I follow 3,000, you know, that 20 of those might overlap. And I found that, like, there's what's most amazing to me about Bitcoin is how there are people who are new to Bitcoin who joined, you know, last year, who already grok it better than people who have been in Bitcoin for 5 years. You know, like,
this me off a lot.
It's very impressive how fast people are able to learn, and I think your book will help with that even more.
I really hope so.
That was the first good argument I've heard for following a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just follow anyone either. Like, it's important to cultivate an echo chamber, and so that it's mostly people that you agree with. And I say that jokingly, but the reality is that, like, within Bitcoiners, within like the hardcore Bitcoiners, there are very strong disagreements and different points of views on different issues. And so it's not like we just pat each other on the back and agree with each other all day. There's actually very interesting debates going on about Bitcoin that they're not debates that you'll hear if you only follow people who are either, you know, surface level Bitcoiners, or they're interested in crypto or blockchain. Like, you're not going to hear them debating BIP 157 neutrino light client technology. Like, you have to go to Bitcoiners to hear that debate between Bitcoiners.
Something that people don't understand about that echo chamber mindset is, you know, on the one hand, yes, like, it keeps out, you know, opposing points of view in many ways. But on the other hand, I don't remember where I got the term, and I don't even remember if I'm getting the term right, but it was something like along the lines of inference differential. And it was this idea of, when you meet a random person, what is the difference just by virtue of how you've lived your life that you would have to, like, you know, get to the, like, think of how much you have to spend debating with someone of just like the definitions of words before you can even get to an argument. And as you get deeper and deeper into ideas, it becomes more and more difficult to do that. And so this is why, like, you know, if you cultivate the echo chamber, it's like you get rid of, like, a lot of, like, you're specifically interested in getting deeper into those ideas. And so you're cultivating the people that can actually manage to do that without having to go through, you know, 20 years of, you know, debating definitions before you can even make a substantial point.
Yeah.
And so with your book, we'll be able to have a common language, and it establishes a lot of the groundwork that then when people want to go on Twitter and debate some of these issues, they have the, like, substantive knowledge of how the underlying system works, so that their arguments are at least, you know, cogent, and we can understand them, instead of, like, getting tripped up on having different definitions of what, you know, this or that means.
Or at least you will be able to link to some paragraph in the book that you know, specifies one definition of a word. This is what I mean by a hard fork, and link to my book, because it's going to be open source, so you will be able to you know, link to it and browse it online. Yeah, I'm really proud of having it open sourced. It's
absolutely
great way to give back.
I mean, I imagine that was challenging, though, because the publishing industry is just not used to doing that.
No, really, right. It took some convincing from my side, actually, but it was a requirement. because you don't get rich from writing a technical book. It will actually cost me a lot of money because I could spend the time consulting instead for make lots of more money. So I think I'd rather use that time to benefit the community than to actually benefit the bottom line of this private company, Manning. I'm not saying that they shouldn't make money. They should make money. They should make tons of money. But my time, when I give of my time, I want it to be as useful as possible. And I think open sourcing the book is one step in that direction.
Yeah, and I look forward to promoting the book, because if it's a commercial success, then that means that we'll get, version 2, and we'll get Grokking Lightning, and we'll get future books. So we got to make sure that there's a good momentum behind it.
Yeah.
And now the Bitcoin, the Bitcoiners bookshelf is starting to fill up. Now we've got Saifedean's book, The Bitcoin Standard. We've got Mastering Bitcoin. We've got Programming Bitcoin from Jimmy Song. And now Grokking Bitcoin from Kalle.
And you also have this Bitcoin Money.
Yes, by Bitcoin Rabbi.
Rabbi a few weeks back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's good. Each one covers a different demographic. And I think that reading them all, there's going to be overlap for sure. But I also think that because everyone has a different way of explaining something, and they're going to cover different little facts on the sides as well, that you get a very big holistic picture of Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. And you can pick and choose the learning style you like.
I recommend that professional economists start with Bitcoin Money by the Bitcoin Rabbi before they move on to the Bitcoin Standard.
Yeah, I ordered it. It's a really cute book.
It's actually a very good book. I expected, the Bitcoin Rabbi is great and a friend, and I expected it to be a good thing. I was blown away by how well it just sort of was able to condense the ideas. When I was reading it, I could totally imagine a 5-year-old understanding the basics of money and Bitcoin as money.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I haven't received it yet. It's on its way, I hope.
So Kalle, I think that it would be helpful for the parents who are Bitcoiners if we also get kind of a technical Bitcoin book aimed maybe at middle schoolers. So kids who, I think middle school starts at the age of 10 or 11, but around that age, so that they can start understanding what a block is, what a UTXO is, and kind of have a children's version of Grokking Bitcoin.
Yeah, I had a reviewer of the book who actually had a pretty good idea for the next edition. That I have different strata of the book. So each chapter has a very simple first part and a drill down second part where you notch up the difficulty. So that you can take the fast lane, just the executive lane, if you will,
or
the preschool or mid-secondary school lane, and then if you really want to grok it, you should read the second parts of each chapter as well. But that's for another edition.
Right, for sure. And what, if you, I guess this is not a fair question to ask because it's so soon, but if you could do something different with the book, what would it be?
I would probably, if I would start over, I would, well, not content-wise, but I would try to engage a good expert early on to actually fact check, because I haven't really done that. So I have, discovered errors as we go, and had to rewrite some parts of the book as we go. And it also helps with the confidence in the book if a really good expert has verified everything. But content-wise, I would probably discuss less about SPV wallets, Bloom filters, and that stuff because it's going away anyway.
Yeah.
And what else? I think I would merge chapter 6 and 7 because I teach chapter 6 is about the blockchain, and in chapter 6 the blockchain is, each block is signed by this Lisa character I talked about in the beginning. She, the miner Lisa, the centralized miner, she signs every block with her private key. And then in chapter 7 we add proof of work to this blockchain. That transition from chapter 6 to 7 was a bit awkward, I think. It's understandable, it's good enough, but I could probably improve that by merging the chapters somehow. So that's a glitch, if you will. That I could improve on.
Cool. So what are you going to do with? I already asked you this. With your free time, you're going to spend it on Netflix, much to Michael's consternation.
Yeah, I don't think I'll have.
Yeah, I don't have to sit around and watch Netflix. I'm happy.
Yeah, we're actually me and my wife are working together on a multi-sig wallet project that we started a few months back now.
Interesting. That's kind of multi-sig is very hard.
It is. There is no good wallet that actually does multi-sigs in a very user-friendly way. So our idea is to have 3 USB sticks with 3 operating systems, an operating system on each that you boot on a computer, and so each stick has an operating system and a key, or an XPRV, sorry. So you and then you have an online machine that we call Mama, and then we have 3 sisters, and those 3 USB sticks are the sisters. So 2 or 3 sisters need to sign each transaction, and you move PSBT, if you know what that is, partially signed Bitcoin transaction. You move that between the main computer, the Mama, and the sisters on another USB stick, and everything happens as soon as you push the USB stick into a sister. It will pop up a question asking you to sign the transaction, and it will, when you click OK, it will be written down on the USB stick again, so you can transfer it easily to Mama. And when you put it into Mama will ask you if you want to broadcast the transaction, and you're done. So you remove all the unnecessary saving to USB stick transfer and importing transaction. Have you done multi-sig with Electrum?
No, I tried it once with the Copay wallet. I don't know if you remember that. It was like made by BitPay a long time ago, but we never ended up really using it, so I don't have a lot of experience with multi-sig.
That was a really, really good attempt at actually solving multi-sig for smaller amounts, because it's online wallets. It wasn't feasible you couldn't do it offline, but it was a great way to implement multi-sig, I think. But I don't know what happened to Copay. BitPay was kind of I don't know. Do you guys know what happened?
I don't want to speculate. Right. Although I love speculating, but not on this.
Right.
All right, I've got to get going, guys. This was a very fun conversation, and I'm very excited about getting the book and reading through it. And because you can learn as much as you want about Bitcoin, but sitting down and reading a book about it never gets old. Always learn something new.
Yeah. I really hope your listeners will enjoy this book.
Awesome.
And
Thanks,
please
Kalle.
use the promo code on their web page.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll put the promo code in the show notes. So if you are interested in getting the book, and I highly recommend all of our listeners go out and buy the book on Manning's website. And Manning is with 2 N's, manning.com/books/grokking with 2 K's, GROKKING -Bitcoin. And then also you can find Kalle on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle, Kalle?
It's Kalle Rosenbaum with one word. Kalle Rosenbaum.
Awesome. And I'll put that in the show notes as well. Is there anything else you wanted to promote before we head off?
No, I'm really tired now. I'm just, I'm finished.
Great.
It was a real pleasure to talk to you guys. I really enjoyed it. I was pretty nervous, but it went okay.
That's all right. It gets easier as you do more podcasts, and you kind of develop a script of little snippets that you want to put out, and I remember like the first podcast I did, I was very like you're thinking about the audience and the listener. And like once you stop doing that and you just start having a conversation with someone and you forget that you're being recorded, it just helps a lot.
Yeah,
absolutely.
What I admire
coming out through Manning soon by Pierre Rochard.
Well, what I found interesting was that Manning was so involved in the process, and that because like today. People are always like, "Oh, don't use an editor, don't use a publisher. Go self-publish on Amazon and print your own book." But they do add a lot of value if they're really good at what they do.
Yeah, that's totally true. I would never have been able to write this book without Manning's help. It's just they have taught me so much about pedagogy and how to write, and everything. It's been great. You should have seen my first drafts on the first few chapters. It was so embarrassing. Yeah. So
same thing with programming, right? Like it's good to have a code review, to have other eyeballs on it from professionals. All right, Michael. Any last thoughts for you, Michael?
No. Once again, thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure to finally get to talk to you.
Yeah. Thank you too. It's a pleasure. True pleasure.
All right. Bye, guys.
Okay. Bye.